Prospecting in a farm is different than prospecting when we're shotgunning all over the place. When we're shotgunning all over the place, there's probably people that are not familiar with our brand. And when we're farming, we've spent a lot of time, money, work, and knowledge making sure that our brand is seen in a positive light. And so we want to pay attention to that when we're prospecting in the farm. Now, most prospectors that are calling, if they're doing telephone prospecting, when they're calling, they're introducing themselves with each call. And that's where we have kind of a win here. Farmers who prospect are continuing the conversation with every call. Because even though we may have never talked before, we may have not have talked with them when we're door knocking or things like that, because they're familiar with our brand, understand that our marketing pieces are kind of a conversation. When we look at the psychology and how people interact with text, it often sounds verbal to them. And so, yes, we've had a conversation, now we get to continue it. And so we have a soft opening to calls. And so we want to take advantage of that, but we also want to make sure that we're not doing a real hard sell or being offensive when we're on the phone. And we want to make sure we're not calling do not call numbers. If it's on the do not call registry and we're farming, I want to make sure we're scrubbing everything against that, because nothing can sully your brand more than calling somebody who's on the do not call registry. Now, some farmers don't prospect. They wait for business to come to them just based on the activities and direct mail. Millionaire agents are a little bit different because we're going to pursue listings any way that we can. And so this is an opportunity for us. So in your farm, great calling campaigns will include things like circle prospecting. That's where maybe we've had a just listed or we're doing an open house. We're going to call around that property and have that conversation. So we're going to use the conversational script. We'll talk about that in the next session, the next video. But circle prospecting, we're going to use that conversational script, and we're including some scripts for you in there, like for just listed. Where that's the reason for the call is we've just listed this property and here's what you need to know about it. Or we just sold a property, and when one sells in the neighborhood, generally we see that there's a couple other people that want to sell at the same time. Just bought script in there. That's where we brought the buyer, and we were so our little reason for the call, we were the only agent in town that was able to find a buyer for that property. And so we use that script. Other things like FSBOs and expires, that's for sale by owner, expireds and canceled, those kinds of things. Now, when we're calling, and you'll see this in the script, I want to really highlight that we want to get those email addresses. If we can get an email address from the folks that we're calling for, we have a great conversation to follow up. We want to get those email addresses because we can use those for a wide variety of different things, including market updates, letting them know about things that are going on, inviting them to social media. We can actually do some Facebook campaigns tied to those email addresses we'll talk about in the Facebook video that allow us to shoot ads only to those people that we know live in the farm. So we want to get those email addresses. Now, efficient calling. Efficient calling, that means we want to take advantage of our calling time, and so we want to make it as efficient as possible. So some tools that are out there is a multi-line dialer. There's dialers out there. One of them is like MOJO. You can dial a few numbers at the same time. When it connects with one, it'll just focus on that one. It allows you to get through a list a lot sooner, since most of the time when you call people, you'll get a voicemail ring. You won't get a pickup most of the time. And so we just want to optimize that. Another thing you need is somebody to call. Now, that could be a wide variety of different people. One of them, it could be you. If you have the time and temperament to do that and you've been working on your scripts, then dive right in. If you don't have the time or the ability, then hire somebody. It doesn't need to be a full-time position, but an ISA/OSA, that's inside sales agent or outside sales agent, however you want to call it. It is somebody that you are employing or contracting with that's going to make those calls for you. So one way that you could do that is a team hire. That could be part-time or full-time, but you're hiring somebody to work out of your location or work out of their home, and they're in your town generally, and you bring them on. That's a team hire. It's going to have a lot of logistics come into play there, especially as far as personnel law and things like that go. Another option is virtual overseas. Virtual assistant, there's a lot of companies out there that provide great folks. We've used VAs for, that's what we call them, virtual assistant is VA. We've used VAs for calling out on both our leads, so an ISA is calling the leads that have already come into our system and following up with them and connecting with them. Sometimes we're doing OSA stuff with them, and they're circle prospecting for us, looking for opportunities with sellers and things like that. We had a great experience. We had one that was out of the Philippines, had no accent whatsoever, excuse me, and he had actually worked in LA at a AT&T store for a while in Los Angeles, and he worked out great. The only coaching we actually ever had to give him was when it got to about 4 p.m. our time. I was listening to a recorded call. We could hear a rooster in the background, so we had to say, well, is there some way that we can get it so the rooster isn't making noise? But there's just wonderful professionals over there, and it's neat to be able to support them on a salary that is better than a lot of the salaries that local businesses can provide for them. And then domestic contractors. We've used domestic contractors as well. There's quite a few of them that will do ISA and OSA calling for you on your behalf. And of course, you don't need to hire somebody full-time or part-time at that point. You're just contracting them for X number of calls or X number of numbers and things like that. Now, when we look at efficient calling, we want to make sure that our tracking and accountability is something that we're looking at. We want to track how many calls we're making, how many appointments we get out of it, how many conversations, because we want to make sure that all this is a good return on investment, not just on finance, but on our time. That's a huge piece too. And accountability. If we've hired somebody, or if we're the ones calling, we want to make sure we're holding us accountable to make the calls, to spend that time, and to be working on our scripts. And if we're not seeing any business come out of it, we need to work on our scripts. The last thing we really want to focus on with calling before we get into scripts is effective lead follow-up. Most of the people that you interact with when you're prospecting are going to be what we call nurturers. They're not ready to sell. They're not ready to buy. They might think they're ready to buy, but their credit score is horrible, or they got bills out the wazoo. Maybe it's a seller and they're just interested in their home value and interested in looking at opportunities. So we want to make sure. Now, most realtors out there, I will be honest, are chasing the now business, and they're looking for the business that is just in the now. You're better than that. You know that most realtor leads out there, most leads for agents are going to be nurtures, and so we want to make sure that we have a system for following up with those nurtures. And there's some great IDXs and CRMs out there that provide some amazing tools for lead follow-up, so that it feels incredibly natural for them, but for you, it becomes pretty easy. We use Boomtown. We're thrilled with Boomtown. It is just an incredibly robust system that allows us the opportunities to follow up with leads. But otherwise, all the efforts are in vain. If we're not following up with those nurtures, we've made great conversations, we've made great connections, but we won't be closing business. So we want to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable, we're tracking our conversion and our return on investment, and that we're making sure that we're doing effective lead follow-up.